Hello and welcome to Console Shock Retro and Modern Gaming Chat with me, Trev, and as always, Stu. How you doing, Stu? I hope you're absolutely spot on.
Yeah, spot on, mate. It's top of the morning.
What was really funny when we recorded our last show, and I think we talked a little bit about sort of, FIFA and FC 26 and that. Literally, as soon as we jumped off the recording, went back to going about the rest of my evening, and all of a sudden in my inbox popped a little email from Steam saying FC 26 on sale right now. I was like, oh well, and I looked at it and it was like it was 17 or 18 quid, and I thought, yeah, all right, I'll grab that. It's still relatively new, really, when you think about it. It's only been out for sort of 3 or 4 months. Trouble is, I was like, well, I haven't got anything I possibly have one thing that it would play on. The Steam Deck, obviously, it won't work unless I installed Windows on it, and I really could not be bothered to do that.
No.
So I do have a pretty old, my first gaming laptop, 2014. It's still knocking around. It's kind of been sat, not doing anything for years, really. I don't think I really have been using it full time. I gave it to my girlfriend for a little bit and she used it for gaming on. So it probably hasn't been used in a sort of a full-time sense for about 2016, 17, because I had a little spate where I frequently kind of upgraded to a newer one. And I've kind of abandoned all of that now. I've got like Steam Deck and, potentially Steam Machine. Handheld PC gaming is kind of where I'm at these days. Well, it didn't really exist in those days. You had the sort of the first incarnations of the GPD Win, but they weren't really something you could just game on full time. Miniaturizing that sort of stuff to run PC games well has come a long way, isn't it? And literally the last, since the Steam Deck, I think has really launched this entire form factor of PCs, hasn't it, really? I think, you could probably really go back to the Switch. I think that lit a fire under a lot of people's arses to try and match that kind of form factor and, level of power. But the Steam Deck really kicked it off, and that's why we've got tons of them now that are, we've probably achieved the ultimate goal now, where we've got the Strix Halo GPD Win 5, I think it is, isn't it? That's literally as powerful as a PS5. The games run identically to it in a handheld, which is awesome. But yeah, I got FC 26 and I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll dig out that old laptop and see if it'll run on that. It's a notch below the minimum requirements. I think it needs like a 1060 or something, a GTX 1060. So it doesn't need a ray tracing card.
No. What's it got in there then?
So it's an MSI. It's an MSI 17-inch gaming laptop. It was very beefy at the time. It was very powerful at the time in 2014 when it launched, when I got it. But it's got a GTX 980M in it. So the 980, the full-size 980 that you'd put in a desktop in that era was very powerful. It was like the top of the range of the 900 series graphics cards that were kind of the flagship for NVIDIA for about 3 or 4 years until the 10 series came out. This is the 980M, which is a slightly less powerful version, M meaning mobile. And it's, I think the system requirements are like a 1070 or a 1060. Football games tend to be fairly lightweight. They kind of want to make sure anybody could run them on as much hardware as possible. They're not really trying to push the envelope of, amazingly ray-traced graphics and needing like a minimum of a 4060 or something. That would be commercial suicide for a game like that, I think. So I thought I was in with a chance of it, but I had to reinstall. I literally reinstalled everything on it to get get it as clean and running as well as possible. There was like sort of a really janky like Windows 10 install on it that had probably, got all manner of glitchy drivers and all kinds of stuff on there that have been laying in it for years. So I wiped all that off, stuck Windows back on it, downloaded all the drivers, which are still available from MSI, got all that stuff back up running. Yeah, and ran through all the Windows updates on Windows 10, managed to get it up to date to the latest version of Windows 10. Steam working on it and everything. And yeah, downloaded FC 26, again, more in hope than expectation. Fired it up, and yeah, it actually runs fine. just put everything down to low in terms of the graphics, which I was obviously expecting to do. And I've been making it'll run at 1080p at 60 frames a second. And it looks like pretty decent. So yeah, I've been able to play it fairly well. Well, perfectly well, really. It's just not the best graphics. Everything's not maxed out, but it's 1080p. So on that laptop screen, it looks pretty sharp. The laptop screen is a 1080p screen. And yeah, it runs really well. Sort of locked 60 frames a second on a GTX 980. Which is pretty impressive. If you had a 980, the full size card you'd have in a desktop, it probably would run a little bit better on top of that. So yeah, that's been fun. I've been playing the career mode on that. I am looking essentially to grab a gaming Windows-based handheld, though. I mean, I have owned them in the past. I had the original ROG Elite for a little bit. Then I got then Lenovo announced the Legion Go, and I thought that looked way better than the ROG Elite. It had the huge screen, and I got that and had that for a while. Actually found it was actually too big. It was the thing's bloody ginormous. It was genuinely uncomfortable to play on that thing. And I kept going back to my Steam Deck. So I was like, maybe I should just get rid of this then. And I did that. But now I'm thinking, I don't want to be using this hulking great big 17-inch laptop. It is really big. To play FC26, so you can get a ROG Ally X, which was the sort of the upgraded version of the original ROG Ally that was sort of in the black case, had more RAM, I think slightly better, faster RAM. I think some of the the hardware in there have been nudged up slightly in terms of upgrades. I think it's had the same Z1 Extreme processor as the original ROG Ally. But I think because it has faster RAM and I think better cache and things like that, it runs games a little bit better. But it will definitely it'll run FC26 absolutely fine. It will run it a lot better than this laptop I'm using at the moment. And yeah, people are selling those on eBay for, 500-ish quid.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah, it's a model that's only a year old, I think the ROG Ally X was. So I thought, you know what, I'll grab that. I'll bung FC26 on it. I'll use it for that. There are some. I tended to use my Legion Go as mostly in the end for PS3 emulation. I can do that on my Steam Deck. There are games. Some games will run very well, like Ridge Racer 7 runs perfectly. Actually, better than a PS3. But some games just don't at all. Like I tried playing Wipeout HD. And that it was like 20 frames a second. The game itself ran at 60 on the PS3, and it can't play that. And weirdly, like some football games, like the 2014 World Cup game, which I've always really liked, it can't run that either. But when I had my Legion Go, it ran that perfectly, and Wipeout ran really well. Just that extra power that those handhelds had as well over the Steam Deck meant you could get those games to that playable level. So if I get a ROG Ally X in the next week or so, I'll probably end up doing a bit more of that as well. And I think you can download now. There was obviously the Xbox ROG Ally, which is kind of the latest ROG Ally, isn't it, really? It's kind of taken over. That has that Windows Xbox full screen experience where supposedly you just boot straight into that and it kind of acts like an Xbox. You're not going into the Windows desktop. All of that stuff is kind of shut down and hidden away. So you're getting a bit more RAM back and you're not being nagged to upgrade your OneDrive and given Teams notifications and, and all that stuff.
I love that. I love that stuff. I love it.
I just look at those notifications. That's the fuck.
Oh, yeah. Thing. OneDrive, isn't it?
I turn all the notifications on. Some of them are off. I turn them all on.
Exactly. I love the adverts.
365, being nagged about that all the time. It's great.
Yeah, I love to be wanted.
Exactly, yeah. It's nice to talk to someone.
Yeah,
it feels like you talk to someone.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, there's this version of Windows that they've got shipped on the ROG Ally, the Xbox ROG Ally, and I think they've made it available on the other handhelds now. So that'd be interesting, actually playing around with that, seeing if it is a genuine improvement and makes those Windows handhelds a bit closer to the Steam Deck experience. There are reviews out there where people have already talked about this, and I think the general consensus is it isn't. Things like sleep doesn't work the same like the Steam Deck does. It's not as reliable as that, and things like that. But yeah, I'll be able to give that a go again. So yeah, basically, C26 works on a laptop from 2014. So yeah, well done, EA. I guess. Interested to see how that compares to running on a handheld. Really, that's 10 years younger.
I mean, I think I told you last week I downloaded in the sale Resident Evil 4, and I installed it on my gaming PC. And I'll be honest with you, playing with mouse and keyboard. I know I always go on about I love mouse and keyboard, but now I think when I start a game, I've got to sort of think to myself, right, am I going to play this with a mouse and keyboard? Am I going to play this with a joypad? What am I going to play this on? What is going to be the best control system for this game? And in some cases, I have to admit, it is the controller. Because, and I'll tell you why, talking about sort of the Steam Deck, is I was like, well, actually, I don't know why I don't like it, because it's the mouse and keyboard control. So I downloaded it on my gaming PC, and I downloaded it on my Steam Deck. And I was playing it the last few nights with the the controls, and actually that's what it's designed for. And it's like, right, now this feels right. The camera, the way, the speed you move around, it's designed for a controller. So I've been playing it on the Steam. I keep under my name on the screen. The viewers can't see this, but it says Steam Deck. So I want to keep on calling it the Steam Deck, but it's a Steam Deck. So I keep on seeing that. Good username. It is actually, yeah. I'm sure
your online already.
Yeah, Steamy Dick. Anyway, so I'm enjoying playing Resident Evil 4 on, and actually it plays absolutely fine. And obviously the graphics are a little bit, how I describe it, sort of mushy in the background. And
I've been. I think I mentioned last episode that I've been playing it on the Steam Deck, and I've actually been playing it docked on a TV. Using a DualSense, a PS5 DualSense as the controller, and I mean, it kind of hovers around 30 to 40 frames a second. Yeah. You could lock it to 30 if you want to keep that consistency.
Well, mine runs between 40 and 30 frames a second, but I don't notice, because it's on the small screen. I don't notice any sort of agitations with the frame time to any frame skipping, or it's
pretty sharp on the screen.
I think it looks a little bit. It looks a little bit soft. It looks a little bit maybe.
Double check you've got like FSR on, because you don't really need it for Resident Evil 4. I had it on initially, and I've put it on, so it's just. Yeah, I switched it off, and the frame rate is the same. Really, it seems to be. Yeah, so I think
that's what's causing it.
Yeah, I think it is making the image look a lot softer.
Yeah, so I was playing it and it felt fine. And I thought, this is all right, isn't it? I'm not too fussed about being able to see the textures of an old village house in the distance. Absolutely perfectly. I'm well enjoying the game, and the atmosphere's there, and things like that, and I'm genuinely really enjoying it. So I think I'm going to investigate playing, because I've always had the Steam Deck and I've always played lots of more indie games on there, but trying to get a little bit with the sort of the bigger type of game. And
those sort of PS4 era games, which is Resident Evil 4 it was right at the end of the PS4 really. But yeah, those sort of games will run fine. Like I said, if you get lost, even better if you get lossless scaling, get that running on the Steam Deck, you'll be able to get it to run at 60 frames a second. You'll add a tiny bit of lag on top of it, but I've been playing it with lossless scaling, and it's been running at 60, and it feels really good. So that's something that worked great with Resident Evil 4.
Do you know what, Trev? What you tell me about all these things, and then I'm like, Do you know what? When you're a teenager and then you've got like an older brother who knows how to do stuff with computers, I think I want to bring my Steam Deck round to your house, and then you just put all this shit on. Just like,
yeah, I do too.
Like, just sort it out and then show me how to use it. That'd be perfect.
You should get lossless scaling, that's for sure, because I think you would quite like it. I mean, the good thing about that is if you did do that, and we went into, we're not going to go in detail about it now.
No, we're not. We can't tell people
last week. Exactly, but you've obviously got your main PC. I mean, lossless scaling would work great on that because you'll be able to get games to hit the refresh rate of your. I assume your monitor is more than 60 frames a second. It's like 120 or something.
60 or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you could run a game, get lossless scaling running in the background, and that'll be able to bump that up to 160. So you'll be sort of hitting that top refresh of your monitor, and the lag won't be really that noticeable because you're already probably running those games at fairly high frame rates as well. It's not like a Steam Deck where you're struggling to get 30. You probably wouldn't want to use lossless scaling in that scenario. Like I was saying about Warhammer Space Marine 2, the game runs terribly, and lossless scaling will make it feel even worse, even if it might look a tiny bit better in terms of smoothness. But yeah, well, again, it's a good thing that we're talking about the Steam Deck because we actually want to look at, imagine really how we envision the next Steam Deck. I mean, we obviously hope there is going to be one. I'm pretty sure there will be. We've got the Steam Machine coming out, which is we're all going to drop, $10,000 on when it comes out due to the RAM prices. And there's the Steam Frame, and I think when we get to 27, it could be that this year they might announce something. I doubt it. I think it's more likely 27, 28. We'll see something like a Steam Deck 2, because then by that point the original Steam Deck will be 6-7 years old. It's arguably already showing its age. Some people will say it's always been a bit underpowered, but it's just about managed to keep up with the sort of PS5 generation. I would say there are certain games that are a bit too heavy that you can't really play on it. Space Marine 2 is a really good example. But there are AAA games that do run okay, like the latest Assassin's Creed and things like that run fine. So it's just about kept in touch with that latest gen. But certainly when we get to the PS6, there's going to be another big jump, and the Steam Deck will be absolutely left behind at that point. So I would hope Valve are going to have a Steam Deck 2 at that point. But we've compiled a list of bullet points, and then, Stu, you can chime in with your thoughts as well. But we'll kick off, I think, with the screen. So I think this kind of is also part of a wish list of, the form factor of the device as well. Personally, I think the screen should stay the size it is. I know you can get Legion Go, which is a ginormous 8.8-inch screen. I think the form factor is pretty good, so I'd keep it the size it is, but I would bump up the resolution to 1080p. I know it won't be able to run every game at that resolution at the maximum frame rate, but there will be games that it will be able to. So it'd be nice to be able to do that. And 1080p looks really good on a handheld. You've obviously got the Switch 2. So there are games that, make use of that resolution on there. The ROG Ally and the Legion Go had very high resolution screens that are beyond the Steam Deck. So yeah, I think having that high resolution would be great. I mean, what do you think about that, Stu?
Yeah, 100%. And you just said, or I was just sort of thinking of something, and we're all talking here about, we want it to, bigger screen, this, better that, better this, better that. But I wouldn't mind actually seeing them. I want a Steam Deck 2. That's obviously will happen at some point. It'll obviously have better specs than the Steam Deck we have at the one we got at the moment. But then I was actually thinking about, and we'll just talk about this for a sort of a minute or two, really. But I love playing the Vita. The Vita's a really smashing machine. So what about if they actually go, okay, well, Steam Deck 2, here you go, but we're actually going to make a Steam Deck 1 Lite or something like that, because you touched upon it earlier about how these Steam machines are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, all these portable gaming machines getting bigger and bigger and bigger, bigger screen, bigger battery, big this, big that. And again, well, actually, that's great, but what about taking it back to, making it like the DS size or things like that? So actually going, okay, well, we'll have this machine, and this is designed for, people to play Stardew Valley. I don't know, things like, sort of lots of the more indie games, the more, the Metroidvania type games where they don't need, all this super duper power and stuff. So as well with the Steam Deck 2, which we'll talk about, is I wouldn't mind something smaller like that.
Yeah, I think a light version would be great. I guess if they could create, a motherboard or whatever you want to call it, that would perhaps it would need to be lower specs, I think, to be able to accommodate a smaller form factor. But something that was probably that Vita size would be great as a complement to the regular Steam Deck. I'm not sure they'll be able to cram everything that in the whatever the Steam Deck 2 is into a smaller form factor. Yeah,
not a Steam Deck 2. But just a more Steam Deck 1 light. Yeah,
like a lighter, maybe at a lower price. And also, we mentioned this in our speculations of what the Steam machine would end up being. And later on, we actually obviously got the announcement of the Steam machines. But we speculated like a screenless version of the Steam Deck. And now you could do this for the Steam Deck 2. You could have, kind of like the PlayStation TV was a screenless Vita. You could have a screenless Steam Deck 2. It's just a little, wedge of a chunk of a little thing that you plug into your TV. It'll probably be the size of what the PS TV was. It doesn't need controls or a screen or anything. And that would just be a Steam Deck 2 that you can plug into your TV. That will probably be a little bit cheaper because you're not paying for a screen and you're not paying for a controller. So I think that would be a good option as well to expand on that on the Steam Deck sort of ecosystem. You could, and that would complement the Steam machine. The Steam machine is obviously the big premium sort of desktop Steam OS gaming PC, and the Steam Deck screenless, whatever you want to call it, would be like a budget version of that. You could do that for a lot cheaper, and it'd be a lot smaller as well. So that would be cool to expand the range. I completely agree with you on that. But with the screen, make it 1080p. Those games that it can run really well will be able to run at that full resolution. FSR and DLSS will be a lot better in the future as well. It already is a lot better than when the Steam Deck was launched. So even if you're not running the game internally at 1080p, when FSR does its thing and blows up that image to look 1080p, it'll probably look as good as a native 1080p screen would. Now you can have they do amazing things with DLSS and FSR that can make games look native when they're actually not. So you'd be making a lot better use of that 1080p screen. You might struggle to get games like the latest PS6 exclusive games that have a PC version. Steam Deck 2 might struggle to run those games at the maximum settings. You'd be bumping them down like you do with the Steam Deck now, running PS5 era games. But definitely that extra resolution I think would be great.
I don't think that's a huge problem, really. Bumping them down and as I said, I was playing Resident Evil 4 and that looks fine to a certain extent. And one thing I was just sort of reminded me when I was playing with the settings just on Resi 4 was actually the Steam Deck 1. It's quite an unusual resolution, something or other by 800. So it's not in the 720.
Yeah, 16 by 10. It's 16 by 10, not 16 by 9.
So then you've got that sort of situation where, for a PC game, it's probably not too much trouble to have that resolution sort of baked in, or just set the resolution and it sort of scales to that. But then having an actual, 1080p, 1440, 4K, or 720, they're the same sort of family of, 16 by 9, just a higher resolution each time. So that would be a really good to make sure it's sort of 16 by 9, so it matches other games. Because if you're playing, on your screen at 16 by 9, and then you go to a 16 by 10, it's going to, it will just look slightly different.
You'll get the black borders, not all games support 16 by 10. Yeah.
Exactly. So definitely make it sort of 16 by 9. But obviously, you mentioned that with the 1080p.
Yeah, so that'll be, all games support 16 by 9, so you'll always be making full use of that display. And with the screen as well, if it could remain OLED, obviously the Steam Deck OLED screen looks stunning. So, I mean, it seems like most companies that make handhelds don't tend to go for OLED screens, and if they do, it's a premium. It'd be nice if Valve could just come straight out with that as the default screen. I have a feeling they may not. They may well have an LCD and they'll come out with an OLED later, but it would be great if they did keep it. And make it VRR as well, so variable refresh rate. That is particularly useful for devices that can't really get a consistent frame rate in a game because they're just struggling to run the game. So you get screen tearing and things like that. A VRR display could smooth that out. So having that in a handheld, I think, is even more important because they are weaker devices that you need to really. You're absolutely struggling with some modern games. So I think it's important to have that. And yeah, same sort of size. I think that 7.4 inch, I think, is what the OLED display is on the Steam Deck OLED. I think keeping it at that size, it will look really crisp with 1080p as well. So yeah, that's the screen. Another thing, going more into, and keeping the form factor the same, I think. Obviously, it's a bit big. It's big. It's never something you could put in your pocket, but I think it's comfortable to use. So I'm happy with.
Actually, it is comfortable to use. But what when I've been traveling a little bit recently, and I do like taking the Steam Deck with me. But then you take it, you have the case, and then you'll touch upon this in your next point is, and then you the battery as well. So it's quite a. Once you've got the case, you've got the machine, it does take up quite a lot of space. And
that's right, yeah.
And that's great, but it's not a DS, 3DS size, or a DS, or a Vita, or a PSP. And that was almost. I know I'm harping on about making it smaller, but it was. Yeah, it plays really well and it feels really good, and it's not something you could play on a park bench. I don't think.
Not comfortably, not something you put in your back pocket. Absolutely not. It's kind of in that same line as the Game Gear and the Atari Lynx, but back in the day, really.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Which were probably maybe even a bit worse. I don't know, but yeah. But in terms of power. So the Steam Deck obviously has a TDP control. I mean, all the handhelds do, the PC handhelds. And the Steam Deck could go up to 15 watts in terms of the graphics. That's what you have the ability to control was the graphic subsystems TDP, thermal delivery profile. And that basically means that when you're playing a game that is very intensive and has, very high power requirements and graphical requirements, you need to run the game really at that 15 watts to get the best frame rate you can. But then you could play you play a lot of indie games and a lot of AA games, we could say, and even emulators or just old games. You could you can nudge down the TDP to 12, 11, 10, even all the way down to 3 watts. And when you do that, you could get a sweet spot where the game still runs very well, but you're using a lot less battery because you've nudged that power consumption down to whatever, however many watts you've set in your TDP settings. And your battery will then last for if you're 2 hours is what you'll get around when you're running it at 15 watts. So it's fairly easy to do the math on that. And if you're running it at half that TDP, like 7, of course, you'll get double that. There's games from the PS360 era that you can run a good frame rate. Like I was playing Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, the 2012 game. And that'll run on 6-7 watts perfectly fine at 60 frames a second. And at that rate, you'll get you could easily get 4 or 5 hours out of a Steam Deck, which is a huge amount to play a AAA game, admittedly an old AAA game. But yeah, The only thing is, at the moment, you hit 15 watts is as high as a Steam Deck will go. But these other devices that have come out, the Rogali, the Lego, all the other ones, they can go way beyond that. They allow you to go to 20 watts, 25 watts, 30 watts, sometimes more than that. And that's helpful because there's a game that, a game is probably struggling to run at a good frame rate of 15 watts. On those other handhelds, you can go beyond that, nudge that TDP up 20, 25, 30, and then all of a sudden you'll be able to get a stable frame rate. That's especially the case for games, intensive, modern PS5 era games.
Yeah, but I feel, Trev, we're going down a slippery slope here of these games, and you have to be almost, if you want to, play them properly, as they're meant to, you're almost sort of chained to a power supply, and I know some of them, you get 2 hours of play from them, but that's from having a full battery, and quite often, your system's left on standby, and you turn it on, and even though you think it's full, you charged it the other night, it's at 82% or something. So then you start playing the game, and then before you know it, you're getting battery warnings. And I think these machines is, I don't know, I feel kind of like, I feel a bit shortchanged with like 2 hours of battery.
That's a valid point, but I think the Switch 2, I think that's what you get out of the Switch 2 game.
You do, really? Honestly, 2 to 3 hours, and
so you're not really. No one's really providing, day-long battery life like you get in maybe a laptop. These days, not a gaming laptop, but like a MacBook Air, you'll be able to use all day.
Because my MacBook, I charge that. I don't know. It feels like once a month, once every 3 weeks. And then I'll go on there and I'll do some emails. I'll do a bit of this, do a bit of that, and then I'll just fold it up. Sits next to the sofa. Then I open up and do, and then I don't ever really feel like I charge that very often. And
yes,
and I'm sort of thinking that these machines, obviously the gaming might demand a lot more sort of power, and the Apple silicon chips are extremely, good sort of power consumption, and the whole machine's designed by Apple. So I think that's, I mean, if I was going to say I want the Steam Deck 2 to be, I'd want, let's say, 6 hours of gameplay on there, and you're probably thinking, yeah, all right, Stuart, yeah, no chance unless you turn it down to 5. TDP, but I'm like, well, I'm saying what I want.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Yeah. I mean, it's not quite an apples to apples comparison because MacBook Airs, their CPUs have efficiency cores that are designed to, just sip power. But then all they're really doing is certainly something like a MacBook Air, which is only really for, browsing the internet and sending emails and light office work. That is a lot less power, needs a lot less power consumption than graphically intensive stuff. And it'd be nice if there was a way if that could translate over to, gaming laptops and gaming handhelds, but I don't think anybody's going to have that figured out quite yet. Might be different if more of them used ARM. ARM is very power efficient, even at high intensive graphical stuff. But I think, what I would like to see is the Steam Deck to open up to those more, Steam Deck 2 to open up to some of those higher TDPs. That kind of goes into as well the battery. I would actually like the ROG Ally X, and the later iterations of that came with an 80 watt hour battery, which is a lot bigger than the Steam Deck's battery. So you could run a really high TDP on the ROG Ally X. Like they can max out the TDP and you'll still get a couple of hours because of that big chunky 80 watt hour battery. So I'd like the Steam Deck to...
Yeah, sorry, talking about batteries, I think 80 watt hour would be perfect, or maybe 99 watt hour, because I was just sort of thinking, I know there's limits on what you can carry on to airplanes. And you can carry up to 100 watt hour in a carry-on or checked bags. So I'm worried in a point there'll be oh, you can get this new handheld. It's really good. It lasts for 7 hours. Oh, yeah, but you can't take it on a plane. And it says on here, up to 100 watt hour, you're allowed to carry it on. 100 to 160, you're permitted to carry it on with prior airline approval. And over 160 watt hour, you're not allowed in passengers' baggage. Must be shipped as cargo with special handling. So
yeah,
I'm thinking that it's like an 80 watt hour. It's almost like the limit of like what you can take on a plane.
Yeah, I mean, gaming handhelds and laptops have ridiculous batteries. The current Steam Deck, I think, is a 40 watt hour battery. But I would like to see a larger battery so it could support those higher TDPs. Like I said, it'd be great to be able to go up to 30, maybe even 40 watts. You'll still get a couple of hours out of an 80 watt hour battery. You'll be able to run games, more intensive games, be able to hit, smooth performance, because you can nudge up that TDP. I don't know if Valve would have the appetite for that. The one thing they were very, hardcore on the original Steam Deck is, we get really good performance at 15 watts. Obviously, the Switch 2 is in a completely different class. That can do stuff, at 5 watts, which is incredible. You can imagine if you stuck an 80 watt hour battery in a Switch 2, it'd last all day. But yeah. This is where the original Steam Deck is. I don't know how wedded Valve are to that, and if they'll let a Steam Deck 2 jump beyond that. I think they should. I think it's a great feature that we have. You can choose to never really bump the TDP up, but if you only ever play like indie games and AA games and old games and get hours and hours and hours of battery life. But if you do play those intensive games and you want to do that on the go, it'd be great to have those TDP options go beyond the 15. And I think an 80 watt hour battery, I don't think it will increase the form factor that much. I know the ROG Ally X is only a tiny bit thicker with that much bigger battery, so I don't think it'll be a big issue there. And in terms of other kind of, like there's the battery and other modules that are inside there, the hardware, you've obviously got an SSD as sort of the internal storage of the Steam Deck, and you've always been able to add SD cards to that, and that's the same for any of the handhelds, really, including like the Switch. But I would like to see that a lot easier for the user to get access to. At the moment, you've kind of got to do a bit of surgery to get to it, which is not intensely difficult, but you still got to it's not something you can quickly pop in and pop out. I would love it if they made it more user accessible. Like there's a slot there somewhere on it, or maybe you just take off a flap like you do with a lot of laptops laid to change the hard drive by just unscrewing a hatch and there's the hard drive, pop it out, pop a new one in. Something like that would be great, where you can just open an easily accessible hatch on somewhere on the unit, on the back, it probably would need to be, of course. You could take out the SSD and put a new one in, which would be great. So yeah, making that a bit more user accessible. Things like RAM and stuff like that, you kind of, you're never really going to be able to change that on a gaming handheld, but the SSD should be a fairly straightforward thing that you should have access to without having to do, major surgery on the device. So that's something that'd be quite cool.
Exactly, yeah. Having that, because I've had no real problems with storage on my one. Obviously, I bought your old machine, so I think it was the top of the range, 512, and I've got sort of plenty of games. I think about 22 games installed on there, so that seems pretty fine. But I think I could get to a point where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm at the max here of what you can sort of store on it. So having that, I think would be sort of really useful. I mean, what comes to mind is the PlayStation 5 is, you can just take off one of the covers on one side, stick an M.2 SSD in there, as long as it's a certain type with certain, certain type of
specs or whatever,
specs, then that can go in there, and then brilliant, you got more storage. And I know people are sort of saying, I know, but you can put a SD card in there. Yeah, you can, but that's not the same speed as something that's directly linked to the processor. So I just think that'd be really good, and that
would be great. Yeah, and also, you've always got that SD card slot to have more storage, but you probably won't be wanting to run, the latest AAA game off an SD card. You know, it probably won't be an optimal performance. You'll have much longer loading time. So some people might want to just completely get the biggest amount of internal storage on SSD they want. And to be able to do that and install it as quickly and easily as possible would be really great. And in terms of like access to storage and things like that, at the moment you've just got that one USB port on the top of the Steam Deck. Obviously, you can very easily connect that to docks and things like that. Well, I think having 2 USB ports would be great. The other handhelds do have that. I think the Steam Deck's probably the only one that has just one. A lot of the time, you might need that for the power cord. So, what if you want to quickly pop in like a USB stick for some reason? You've got to plug the power cord out, stick that in. It'd be nice to have an extra USB port, maybe one on the bottom, one on the top, one on the bottom. Some people like their power cord to come out the bottom of the system. Some people like it to go on the top. You know, you've got that option if you have 2 of them. And also allow one of those USB ports to support an external GPU.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when you dock it, you could potentially have access to, the most powerful graphics card on the market, with your Steam Deck 2. And then obviously you'll get fantastic performance, the best performance you can get. Yeah.
But would, I'm hypothetical question here is, let's say you bought the Steam Deck 2, you put a 4 gigabyte M.2 SSD, got loads of games on there. Then you've got a separate, box where you put a 5090 in there, and then that's powering, through the USB-C ports. It seems like you're almost sort of making it a really powerful computer, but then you're just deciding to play on it on a really small screen. It'd be, again, like having a great big computer and then going, okay, well, I bought this computer for like $5,000. It's got everything you want. And then I bought a $49.99 mini monitor from Amazon, and I plugged it in, and I'm gaming. And I don't know. it seems like a really good idea, but I don't know. Would it work?
Well, the thing is, I think the audience here, I think we need to be real on it. The audience is, these are PC gamers. This is what these devices appeal to. These are the people that fill these niche grey areas that you're kind of scratching your head at. Go on any Facebook group about, the ROG Ally or this, that, and the other, and they're all talking about how great it is when they get home. They pop their ROG Ally into a dock that they've handmade that has a 5090 in it, and they sit on the couch and play it. So I don't
know this world. I've got to investigate this world.
Absolutely, yeah. You'll be pretty terrified by it. But I mean, it's just kind of a more intense version of what you do with a Switch. You just stick it in a dock, and you get all the clocks go up, and the amount of speed of the RAM and like the CPU goes up, and all of a sudden those games that are sort of locked to 720 or 1080 on when you're handheld, they'll get boosted up to 1080 to all the way up to 4K when they're plugged into the TV. I mean, there's obviously some people that are like, well, I never want to play it as a handheld because I want to always make sure it's 4K. And they'll just have it permanently docked. And there's plenty of people that play Switches, without ever taking it out. So either that will take the form of, I think it's a great option to always have that external GPU. So when you're sat at home and you're not really making the most of it being portable, and maybe you're just docking it at a TV when you're at home, you can now have that huge boost in performance that an external GPU would have. And if you don't like it, then obviously you don't need to use it. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have that option. And that could take the style of a third-party dock with a GPU in it, or maybe Valve would be like, no, we'll make an actual dock now that's not just something that gives you a few extra USB ports. We'll actually have a more powerful graphics card in it, have all the extra USB ports and everything. So when you plug it in, it'll actually do a major power boost. So Valve may want to produce that themselves. I don't know if that's better or worse than just having it. I think it's probably better to have it just a thing where you could just go to whoever you want and they have a dock with the graphics card in, as opposed to maybe just Valve having the only one that you can connect it to, like a Switch, really. I'd rather it was more of an open thing.
Yeah,
I think that'll be a great thing.
Valve are pretty good at that, aren't they? Yeah.
They are, yeah. I don't think they're that interested in locking things down. They haven't done that really at all with the Steam Deck. So maybe they'll make one themselves and you can take it or leave it. It might be a bit cheaper because they can probably get the parts cheaper and in volume and all that stuff. Whereas I think Asus have an external GPU, which is not necessarily just for their handhelds, it's for anything. Because some people might have laptops.
What I've seen is almost like great big sort of boxes, and you can put a 5090, a 4070, whatever you want into it.
Yeah,
and then,
right. Yeah.
Then a cable comes out, and so what I'm sort of visualizing, the way I play my Steam Deck is quite often, I'm sort of laying in bed early in the morning or late at night. And then I'm sort of playing on it, and then it'd be almost having a great big box next to me, and then that'll be plugged into the Steam Deck to give it additional power, graphics power and whatever. And yeah, I mean that seems like something that Stuart wouldn't be interested in. I want to play it
one way
it,
of doing it.
But
I think it's more likely it'll be something that's plugged into your living room TV. So when you're at home, like you do with the Switch,
like that. Yeah,
you have your dock with your GPU in it, and then when you get home, you pop it into that, sit on your couch with your controller, and you're playing those Steam Deck. You're playing your Steam Deck with a huge boost in performance. But there probably are some people that are in bed and have a whacking great big eGPU dock next to them and have a cable hanging out of the handheld. So, I'm sure there's people
think
that
about
do
that is, I think what you'll do is you'll be, playing, I keep going about Resident Evil 4, but you'll be playing Resident Evil 4 on your Steam Deck, you'll save it, you walk in the door, and then you'll turn on your Steam machine and load into Resident Evil 4. And
I mean that's probably more likely what you would do, right? Yeah.
I think, but saying that though, having a dock with like additional power in there, so you can go in and just drop that into it, and more like a Switch. Obviously, the Switch works really well, so if that and that can do that sort of kind of performance.
Someone might reason, I could get a Steam machine, but then I could also get the external eGPU dock, which might be like maybe a couple £100 more expensive than a Steam machine. But I could, I'll be getting the same, or potentially it could be more powerful than the Steam machine. So I'd rather spend that money on that, plug my Steam Deck in when I get home, and just play it from the couch like that. So there's potential for it to kind of rival just having a Steam machine. So I mean that's something I would like, just that ability to plug in an eGPU and it not being restricted in any way. You can just go away and get whatever eGPU you want to do, and it'll work. Like I said, more likely for that couch gaming sort of sessions, you'll probably be using that for the most part. In terms of other stuff, one thing that I think is cool.
Hall effect joysticks. I hear that all the time.
Yeah, they're joysticks that use magnets. Instead of like basically mechanical stuff now that can go bad, and that's why you get stick drift. Whereas a joystick based on a magnet doesn't have that issue. I've heard they do have issues still, but they're not. Then they don't get stick drift. So Hall effect joysticks, I think, could be a cool thing. Maybe it's something, and maybe have it like an Elite Series controller where you could actually plug them out and plug them in and have different sized ones and things like that for different kinds of sessions, gaming sessions, and the level of control that you like. I'm not into that personally, but having that option there, Hall effect joysticks are just on their own, I think would be a big improvement.
Yeah, I'd like to. I don't know if I've got a controller that has them, or if I could sort of use them and go, actually, this is better, or worse. But what do you think
the
about
new Legion Go does? I think the new Legion Go has them. I don't think like a PS controller does, or an Xbox. Maybe the Elite versions of those controllers do. I think the regular
really
ones,
like
just a regular.
The triggers on the Steam Deck.
You mean the R2, the L2?
Yeah, L2 and R2. They feel a little bit. They could do a bit more improvement. They should. I don't know.
Yeah,
people.
I think they're okay. I don't really use the extra buttons on the back, like the L4 and L5, and I find the only use that I've really had for them is a rewind button in an emulator. Because you normally run out of buttons in an emulator when you're playing like a PlayStation game. You're kind of using up all the controls anyway. But those extra buttons, and like for quick saving, for like quick load and quick save. Some games give you a button for that anyway, but others don't. So where there isn't one, you can kind of program that into those buttons on the back. So as a rewind button in RetroArch and for quick load and quick save. So I think keep those. Because it's better to have them and not need them again. That whole argument. There's plenty of people that absolutely swear by them and use them all the time. One thing that I liked about the GDP Win 5, that insane Strix Halo handheld, it has that external battery that you can slap on the back. I think that would be a good thing as an extra bit of power. Remember, laptops used to give you the option to take out the CD drive and put a battery in that bay. So if you're not planning on using your CD drive, you can stick an extra battery and you've got 2 batteries and you doubled your battery life. I think that would be quite cool if that was an option.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Steam Deck and you imagine you're holding it, having another battery in the middle there, that's not in the way.
No.
So
right.
that could be, fixed on the back, or again, having 2 USB-C ports, you could have a separate high-performing battery, so you can actually just sort of plug that in, so it's sort of charging and playing at the same time. I guess so. There are sort of, I guess, kind of sort of workarounds, but having something that's actually, I guess, sort of dedicated.
If it could actually attach, though, I mean, you can kind of do that now. You could like blue tack like some kind of battery bank, can't you? But it's not very elegant. If they actually had like it would need like I'm looking at something that would actually have the connector on the casing of the device, like the teeth or whatever that it would latch onto, and it'll be a solid connection that will stay there. Maybe it feeds the power through that connection, so you don't end up using up your USB port, or maybe there's a little wire that would need to go in, which is not a big deal if you've got 2 ports. But yeah, I think that'd be great. You might have to be careful when you're taking it on a plane, but especially if it's another 80 watt-hour battery. But God, if you're just just traveling around and not getting on a plane, and you've got 2 80 watt-hour batteries, basically, you can get if you're playing an indie game and you've dropped the TDP all the way down to 5 watts, God, you'll get easily all day, and then probably a couple of days of battery. Even playing a hugely intensive game, you might get 5 or 6 hours, even at the maximum TDP. So that'd be just like an accessory, really. Not a default thing that you get with it, but an accessory that Valve could sell. And maybe if it's like an open source way of doing it, then other companies could make batteries that will connect to that same connector. So I think that would be really cool. And in terms of other sort of things, I guess there's only really case colors. I mean, they've done the odd sort of special edition, and they tend to only be available in America. Like there was a transparent case, and there was a white Steam Deck as well. I know you can kind of take the shell off if you want to do some surgery and just put one on yourself, but some people just want to be able to buy a different colored, Steam Deck, a red one, a blue one, So that would be cool if they made more options. Kind of a nice to have, though. It's not really a big deal. And I think software-wise, I mean, SteamOS is pretty good now these days. There's obviously things like anti-cheat games. I mean, that's not really something that's going to be easy to solve. You need the cooperation of EA, and I don't think that's really going to happen anytime soon. Valve would need to kind of push it.
I mean, what it is frustrating when lots of these sort of games you can't play these anti-cheat software, and I don't know if there is a way to get around that to be able to sort of play them. But what I've got a video sort of saved on how to set up. There's something you can set up so you can get access to all of your Epic Games and GOG library, and so that will be and there'll be like another tab to install the games. And I'm like, oh, all right, well, I'll set that up. So when I get a spare moment, I'll try and do that. And that always looks good. But then, the Steam Deck for me is, I love it if I have access to Game Pass. And I know, Steam's its own ecosystem. So I would love it if it was like, you got access to the Steam Pass, Game Pass games on there. Like you had another tab, and then the ones which were designed for handheld gaming worked on there. That'll be, for me, I would use a Steam Deck so much more because there's constantly that constant stream of games coming through for Game Pass, and some of them are, so many of them are just small indie games that are absolutely perfect for it. And I know there's probably all these things in the background that Steam doesn't want to do it because people won't buy games from Steam. That'll affect their sales, and then Xbox don't want to do it because then people go, I don't need to buy an Xbox or a Microsoft machine. I can just buy a Steam machine to gather access to all of this. There's probably loads of pretty good reasons, but I would just like to see that.
Yeah, I agree. I think better integration of other PC stores. Again, I don't really know how happy Valve would be for that. I mean, at the moment, you've kind of got to sort of hack Steam OS a little bit with Decky Loader, Decky Loader is great, by the way. I think everybody should just have that by default. But there are ways to get those other stores in a fairly easy, accessible way. I've always found actually getting the games running, though, from those sort of slightly hacky ways of getting the stores available to you is a bit hit and miss. Like, you're the one that told me about it, but Tomb Raider Remastered, the Tomb Raider trilogy remastered, that was you claimed it off Amazon and it went into your good old games. That I've been able to get running perfect on my Steam Deck, as if I bought it from Steam. But then I got another game. I got Sensible Soccer 2006 on GOG. Wow. It was like £2 or something. And it's a Windows XP era game. And via the way that I use to get to my good old games on my Steam Deck, it's there. I can download the game, but it just craps out when I try and run it. I don't really know why. And there's been a couple of other games I've tried that just won't. A lot of those DOS, like GOG sell a lot of DOS games, like the original Rayman and Mega Race and things like that. And they just don't work. I've looked up how to get around that, and there are ways to get around it, but it's a faff. And there's DOS games that I bought from Steam that work fine. Like I bought Earthworm Jim. That's the version of the game they're selling is the DOS version from 1986, and that runs fine actually Mega Race as well, which is a classic DOS game from the mid-90s. That works perfect as well when you buy it from Steam. But getting it to run it through the GOG version is just a ball ache. So, yeah, maybe if they were a bit more, they allowed better access to those stores as part of the OS. But again, I'm not confident they would do that, really, because they probably want to. They're okay with you having ways of getting to it, but they don't want to make it too easy for you because they want you to buy your games off Steam, if possible, even though they've got your money from your Steam Deck, buying the Steam Deck in the first place. And I guess the final thing, we've mentioned all these different upgrades that they could potentially do without really mentioning what performance increase would you be looking at. And, the Steam machine that's coming out is, they sort of said, I think it was a 6 times increase in power over the Steam Deck. So I think you'd be looking for another jump above that. I think that would be the absolute minimum, would be a 6x increase on the current Steam Deck in a Steam Deck 2. But I think you want to be looking at 8, 9, maybe even 10x the power of the current Steam Deck. I think if you look at what the PS6 is going to be as a baseline, it should try and be within that kind of realm where it could run those games. Obviously not at the quality of a PS6 would be able to do, but probably, you could like reduce the frame rate, get the settings down, and it'll be able to run, that next generation exclusive games at low settings. That'll be whatever X increase in performance that needs to be. And also it potentially will be competing with the PS6 handheld. And supposedly that will just run PS6 games. So if people are pissed off that their Steam Deck 2 can't run, The Last of Us Part 4, 1080p, 60 frames a second, or 4K, that the PS6 can, and the PS6 handheld can run it at 1080p, but it's not, it's the same game, whereas my Steam Deck, I've got to put FSR all the way up to super performance mode, and it looks smeary and ugly, and the frame rate doesn't stay at 30, and they won't kind of get away with that probably as well as they are with the Steam Deck right now, because there is that PS6 handheld coming. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, when we talked about this in the week, this subject, and you said, what do you want to see from the Steam Deck 2? And my simple answer was, I want more power, I want more storage, I want more memory, I want better graphics, and I was thinking, of course, this is like an obvious question, really, isn't it? So for me, it's got to be 60 frames a second at 1080p, for all of the latest games, and whether or not that goes through a sort of frame generation route. Because obviously there's lots of that going on, but that for me is that really so. Yeah, so I want it to be able to play, all the latest games at 1080p at 60 frames a second on the small screen, and that's I think a really important sort of target to hit. And so and I think I say all the latest games. I think for the next 3 years. So if it came out today. Because the benefit of the Steam Deck is it seems to have a lot more life than all of the other machines, like ROG Ally, Legion, Lenovo, and then all these GP. They're out for 6 months, and there's another one, then there's another one, then there's another one, then there's another one, and then you hit the. You were talking about, they go for about 300 quid on eBay, some of these older ones that are still really good. And it's just like, I was looking at them and going, they're a really good deal. And the Steam Deck has really sort of held its price because it's, it's simple, it's consoleized, it's, if you want to go in there and, do all this, I've added the frameless generation app on it and lossless scaling. I've done this, I've done that. I've put emulators on it. I've linked it up my TV, and I've sent emails to everyone. I've edited a video. Well, yeah, you can do that, but you can also just turn it on, put your Steam details in there, and then download all the games in your library that say run great on deck, and then away you go. And they just they work. So
absolutely,
my point of view, just sort of 1080p latest games, run at 60 frames a second. I'm not, I don't want to say, they've got to have ray tracing, they've got to have all the latest features. I'm not fussed about that. I just want to be able to play the latest games, and then you play them on a handheld. So you're not. I don't believe people demand. 200 frames a second, ray tracing, 4K, all of that, and HDR, and every bell and whistle on it. It's a handheld, so yeah.
Well, we'll see. Obviously, we've got potentially that PS6 handheld coming out, so the competition will be a bit more interesting than when the Steam Deck launched. There'll be yet more gaming PCs from other makers like Lenovo and Asus. That'll be coming out constantly over the next few years, so it'll be very interesting what a Steam Deck 2 will look like, and hopefully we'll find out in the next couple of years, maybe even sooner. So Stu, where can you find us on the internet?
We're everywhere, so you can find us on search Console Shock on Twitter, search Console Shock on YouTube. You can search Console Shock on Facebook and any sort of podcast client. If you search Console Shock, you'll be able to find us.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed the latest show, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.
Thank you very much, and see you next week. Next time.